She was forced to marry a cold millionaire. But what happened on their wedding night will shock everyone forever. A great story for my greatest family. Watch till the end. You're going to love every moment of it. God bless you all. Let's begin with love. Angela Morris had exactly 48 hours to save her father's life, and the price was her freedom. She stood in the hospital corridor, her scrubs still damp from the emergency surgery she'd just assisted with, staring at numbers that might as well have been a death sentence. $850,000. The experimental treatment her father needed wasn't covered by insurance, and the hospital had made it clear, without payment, there would be no procedure. "Angela, you need to go home and rest." Her colleague touched her shoulder gently. "You've been on shift for 16 hours. Angela shook her head, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Home was her father's bedside in the cardiac unit 3 floors up, where monitors beeped his weakening heartbeat. Home was her younger brother's frightened eyes as he sat vigil, his medical textbooks forgotten on the chair beside him. Home was the crushing weight of being the only one who could hold this family together since her mother had died. The weight of responsibility sat heavy on her shoulders. She was tired, bone-deep exhausted in a way that went beyond physical fatigue. Every shift at the hospital, every bill she paid, every encouraging smile she gave her brother while her own heart was breaking. It was all catching up to her now, threatening to drown her. She walked to the hospital chapel, a small room that smelled of lilies and old wood, and sank onto a pew. Her hands, usually so steady when inserting IVs or monitoring vitals, trembled as she pressed them together. "Please," she whispered to the silence. "I don't know what to do. I've tried everything. I've begged the insurance company, applied for every grant, reached out to every charity. There's nothing left. No options. No hope." The chapel door opened behind her. Angela didn't turn around, assuming it was another nurse or a patient's family member seeking the same solace she desperately needed. "Your mother used to sit in this exact spot." The voice was deep, measured, belonging to a man who expected to be heard. Angela's head snapped up and she found herself looking at Bernard Ellison. Everyone in the hospital knew who he was. His company had donated the entire West Wing. His name was on plaques and walls throughout the building. But more than that, he was the man whispered about in break rooms, self-made, brilliant and utterly untouchable. The man whose eyes were the color of a winter storm, cold and grey and seemingly capable of seeing straight through whatever facade you presented. Those eyes were fixed on her now, and Angela felt exposed, vulnerable in a way that had nothing to do with her tears or her exhaustion. "You knew my mother?" Angela's voice came out smaller than she intended. Bernard stepped closer, his expensive suit looking out of place among the simple wooden pews. "We grew up 3 blocks apart before I had any of this." He gestured vaguely, encompassing the hospital, his wealth, his empire. "Your mother was kind to me when kindness was rare. She used to sneak me sandwiches when my father spent the grocery money on liquor." Angela had never heard this story. Her mother had died before she could share all her memories, taken by the same heart condition that now threatened her father. The revelation that Bernard had known her mother, had been helped by her, made this moment feel less random, more like fate. "She never mentioned you," Angela said softly. "She wouldn't have. Your mother wasn't the type to keep score of good deeds." Bernard's expression grew distant, lost in memory. "When I made my first million, I tried to find her, to thank her, to pay her back for those sandwiches and the kindness that kept me going. But she'd already passed. I regretted that I never got to tell her what her compassion meant to a scared, hungry kid." Angela felt tears prick her eyes. "She would have been happy just knowing you survived, that you made something of yourself." "I hope so." Bernard refocused on her, his grey eyes intense. "I'm sorry about your father. I heard about his condition. Then you know there's nothing that can be done." The bitterness in Angela's voice surprised even her. "Not unless I can pull nearly $1 million out of thin air." And I've tried everything, every grant, every charity, every program. There's nothing left. Bernard was quiet for a long moment, and Angela could almost see him thinking, calculating, weighing something heavy in his mind. When he spoke again, his words changed everything. What if you could? Angela turned to face him fully, searching his expression for the cruel joke she was certain must be coming. But his face was serious, those grey eyes steady and unwavering. I don't understand. I need a wife. Bernard said it simply, as if he were discussing the weather. My grandmother is dying. She has one wish before she goes, to see me married and settled. She raised me after my parents died, gave up everything to make sure my sister and I had a chance at life. This is the only thing she's ever asked of me. Angela's mind raced, trying to make sense of his words. And you want to marry me, a complete stranger? Not a stranger. Rebecca Morris's daughter. Bernard's expression softened almost imperceptibly when he said her mother's name. Someone who understands medicine, who can help care for my grandmother in her final months. Someone who needs something desperately enough to agree to an arrangement that benefits us both. An arrangement. Angela's heart was pounding now. Her nurse's instinct to remain calm under pressure, battling with the surreal nature of this conversation. Bernard reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded document. A contract, 2 years of marriage. You'll live in my home, present as my wife to my family and the world. In exchange, I'll pay for your father's treatment immediately, cover all his medical expenses, and provide for your family's needs. When my grandmother passes and the 2 years conclude, we divorce quietly. You'll receive a settlement that ensures you and your family are secure for life. Angela stared at the papers he held out to her. Why me? You could have anyone. Someone from your world, someone who wants me for my money. Bernard's laugh was hollow. I've had enough of those. At least with you, the transaction is honest. You need something. I need something. No pretense of love, no lies about feelings that don't exist. The words should have stung, but instead they felt oddly safe. After watching her mother die, after seeing her father's heart fail, after carrying the weight of her family's survival on her shoulders for so long, the idea of a relationship with clear boundaries and no messy emotions held a certain appeal. I need time to think. You have 48 hours. Bernard stood, placing the contract on the pew beside her. After that, the offer expires. My lawyers have drafted everything. It's ironclad, fair to both parties. Your father gets his treatment. Your brother finishes medical school without debt. You get security. I get peace for my grandmother's final days. He walked toward the door, his footsteps echoing in the small chapel. But before he left, he turned back. Your mother once told me that sometimes the bravest thing we can do is accept help, even when our pride screams at us to refuse. She was right about most things. Then he was gone, leaving Angela alone with a document that promised to save her father's life and sell her own. She picked up the contract with shaking hands and began to read. The next 2 days passed in a blur. Angela worked her shifts, sat with her father, watched her brother struggle to stay awake over his medical books while keeping vigil. She read the contract so many times she had sections memorized. Bernard's lawyers had been thorough. She would want for nothing materially. Her family would be protected, and there were even clauses about mutual respect and separate bedrooms. It was everything she needed and nothing she wanted. On the second night, her father's monitors started alarming. Angela ran to his room, her heart in her throat, and watched the medical team work to stabilize him. When his heart rhythm finally steadied, the attending physician pulled her aside. He needs that treatment, Angela. Soon. Or next time, we might not be able to bring him back. She knew. God, she knew. That night, at 11:45, Angela found herself standing outside the address Bernard had written on the back of the contract. The Ellison estate was everything she'd imagined. Imposing gates, manicured grounds, a house that looked more like a museum than a home. She rang the bell. Bernard answered the door himself. No butler or housekeeper, just him, in dark slacks and a crisp white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. For the first time, he looked almost human, almost approachable. "I thought you might come tonight," he said quietly. "My father almost died today." Angela's voice was steady, even though nothing else about her felt that way. "I can't let him go through that again. I can't watch him die when I have the power to save him." Bernard stepped aside, letting her into a foyer that could have swallowed her entire apartment. "Is that a yes?" Angela pulled a pen from her purse, the same pen she used to chart medications and vital signs, to document life and death in neat clinical handwriting. She uncapped it, the small click sounding impossibly loud in the vast space. "Show me where to sign." Bernard led her to a study lined with books, a massive desk dominating the room. The contract lay waiting, along with another document she hadn't seen before. "What's this?" "Authorization for your father's treatment. The moment you sign our agreement, this goes to the hospital. He'll have his procedure within the week." Angela looked at Bernard Ellison, this man who was about to become her husband, and saw nothing in his expression that gave away what he was thinking. He was a locked vault, all cold control and careful distance. Her hand trembled as she signed her name on the first document, then the second. Bernard signed below her, his signature bold and sure. "It's done then." Angela set down the pen, the finality of the moment settling over her like a heavy cloak. "It's done." Bernard gathered the documents, placing them in a folder. "We'll marry in 3 days. Small ceremony, just family. Is that acceptable?" "Family." Angela's voice cracked slightly. "I haven't told my father or brother what I'm doing, how I'm paying for the treatment. You'll tell them I'm an old family friend, that we've been seeing each other quietly and decided not to wait." Bernard's tone was matter-of-fact, as if he'd already scripted this entire scenario. "The hospital will have the payment tomorrow morning. Your father will have his procedure, and by the time he's recovered enough to ask questions, we'll already be married." Angela wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly cold despite the warmth of the house. "What have I done?" For just a moment something flickered in Bernard's grey eyes, regret perhaps, or recognition of the sacrifice she was making. But it disappeared so quickly she might have imagined it. "You've saved your father's life." He said it gently, the first gentle thing she'd heard from him. "Everything else we'll figure out as we go." 3 days later, Angela stood in an unfamiliar bedroom in the Ellison estate, looking at herself in a full-length mirror. The wedding dress Bernard's sister had provided was beautiful, simple, elegant ivory silk that felt like water against her skin. It should have been the happiest day of her life. Instead, she felt like she was attending her own funeral. A knock at the door made her turn. Bernard entered, stopping when he saw her, his expression unreadable as always. "You look—" He paused, seeming to search for words. "Beautiful." "Thank you." Angela's voice was barely a whisper. "Is it time?" "Almost." "I wanted to speak with you first." Bernard crossed the room, stopping a careful distance away. "I know this isn't what you imagined for your wedding day. I know I'm not who you would have chosen. But I want you to know I'll keep my word on everything we agreed to. You'll be treated with respect in this house. You'll want for nothing except love." The words slipped out before Angela could stop them. Bernard's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Except love," he agreed. "But perhaps that makes us both safer. Love makes people careless, vulnerable. This arrangement keeps us both protected." Angela wondered who had hurt him so badly that he believed protection was worth more than connection, but she didn't ask. That wasn't part of their agreement. "My father is doing well," she said instead. "The surgery is scheduled for next week. The doctors are optimistic." "Good." Bernard offered his arm, formal and distant. "Shall we?" The ceremony was brief, held in the estate's garden, with only a handful of people present. Bernard's grandmother, Dorothy, watched from a wheelchair, her eyes sharp and knowing despite her frail body. His sister, Diane, stood as a witness, her expression tight with disapproval. Angela's brother attended, still confused about the whirlwind romance, but happy to see his sister seemingly settled. When the officiant asked if they took each other as husband and wife, Angela looked into Bernard's grey eyes and said, "I do," sealing a bargain that terrified and saved her in equal measure. Bernard's kiss was brief, chaste, the brush of lips that meant nothing and everything. As guests offered congratulations and champagne was poured, Angela caught Dorothy watching her with an expression that seemed almost sad. That night, standing in the massive master bedroom suite of her new home, Angela faced her husband across an expanse of Persian carpet and understood how completely her life had changed. Bernard gestured to a door on the far wall. "That's the adjoining suite. I'll sleep there. This room is yours. You have complete privacy." Angela had expected this. It was in the contract, but hearing it spoken aloud made it suddenly, achingly real. She was married to a man who would sleep in a different room, who would never hold her through the night, who saw her as nothing more than a means to an end. Bernard? His name felt strange on her tongue. He turned back, his hand on the door to his room. "Do you think your grandmother believed it? That this is real?" Something painful crossed his face, gone so quickly she almost missed it. "My grandmother is dying, Angela. She wants to believe it, so she will." He started to leave again, but this time Angela moved, crossing the room before she could talk herself out of it. "Wait, please!" She was close enough now to see the flecks of blue in his grey eyes, close enough to catch the scent of his cologne. "I know this is just a business arrangement. I know we're strangers who signed papers, but could we talk? Just for a while?" Bernard stood very still, looking at her with an expression she couldn't read. For a long moment she thought he would refuse, would retreat behind his walls and leave her alone on her wedding night. Then he did something that surprised them both. "All right," he said quietly, his voice holding the barest hint of warmth. "Let's talk." They sat in the sitting area of the bedroom, two strangers legally bound, and as the moon rose over the Ellison estate, they began the tentative, terrifying work of learning each other's names, each other's stories, each other's scars. And when Bernard finally stood to leave in the early hours of morning, Angela whispered words that would change everything. "Stay, just stay." He stopped at the door to his room, his hand on the knob, frozen by her request. "Angela, not for anything except company. I don't want to be alone tonight, please." Bernard Ellison, the man who had built empires on cold calculation and careful distance, turned back to the woman who was now his wife, and for the first time in longer than he could remember, he felt the walls around his heart develop the smallest crack. "All right," he said again, this time softer. "I'll stay." Chapter 2. The Wedding of Strangers. Morning light filtered through curtains Angela didn't remember closing, and for a disorienting moment she forgot where she was. Then she felt the warmth beside her, not touching but there, and remembered everything. Bernard had fallen asleep in the armchair, his long frame folded uncomfortably, his jacket discarded, tie loosened. In sleep, the hard lines of his face softened, making him look younger, almost vulnerable. Angela watched him for a moment, this stranger she'd married, and felt something shift in her chest. She'd spent the night talking to him, really talking, and discovered layers beneath his cold exterior. He was funny in a dry, unexpected way. He was thoughtful, remembering small details she'd mentioned. And underneath all that control, she'd sensed a loneliness that matched her own. He stirred, those grey eyes opening to find her watching him. For just a second, before his usual mask slipped back into place, she saw surprise, maybe even contentment. "Good morning." His voice was rough with sleep, and Angela found the sound oddly intimate. "Good morning." Angela pulled the blanket closer, suddenly aware of how domestic this felt, despite nothing having happened. "You didn't have to stay all night." Bernard sat up, running a hand through his hair, in a gesture that seemed almost boyish. "You asked me to. I don't go back on my word, even when it's just sitting in an uncomfortable chair. Especially then. He stood, reaching for his jacket, and Angela noticed the stiffness in his movements from the awkward sleeping position. I should let you rest. You've had a difficult few days. Angela felt an unexpected pang of disappointment. She'd grown used to his presence through the night, the quiet comfort of not being alone. You could stay for coffee. I mean, if you want to. We should probably talk about logistics, living arrangements, schedules. Bernard paused, his hand on the doorknob, and when he turned back there was something warm in his eyes. I'd like that. Let me order us breakfast. You must be hungry. But before he could leave, a sharp knock interrupted them. The door opened before either could respond, and a woman in her 30s swept in, Bernard's sister, Diane. Well, isn't this cozy? Her voice dripped with sarcasm. The happy newlyweds together at last. Diane, Bernard's tone held a warning. We discussed this. You discussed it. I simply had to accept that my brother married a complete stranger to appease grandmother's dying wish. Diane turned to Angela, her eyes cold. No offense, but this is absurd. Bernard, she's a nurse. She works in a hospital. She has nothing, comes from nothing. Enough. Bernard's voice cracked like a whip. Angela is my wife. You will treat her with respect, or you will leave this house. Do you understand? Angela had never heard him speak like that. Sharp, commanding, protective. Diane's mouth opened and closed, her face flushing. This isn't over, she finally managed, then turned and left, slamming the door behind her. The silence that followed was deafening. I'm sorry about that. Bernard's shoulders were tense. My sister has always been difficult with change. She's not wrong, though. Angela stood, wrapping a robe around herself. I am just a nurse. I do come from nothing. And this marriage is absurd. Don't. Bernard crossed to her in 3 strides, standing closer than he ever had. Don't diminish yourself because my sister is bitter. You're here because I asked you to be, because I needed you to be. That makes you exactly where you belong. Angela looked up at him, at this complicated man who could be cold as winter one moment and fiercely defensive the next. Why me, Bernard, really? He was quiet for a long moment, and she thought he might not answer. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, almost vulnerable. Because you understand sacrifice. Because you know what it means to give up everything for family. Because when I looked at you in that chapel, I saw someone who would keep their word, who would fight for what matters. He paused. And because your mother saw something in me worth saving when I was a boy with nothing. Maybe I'm hoping some of her kindness lives in you too. Before Angela could respond, another knock came, gentler this time. Master Bernard? An older woman's voice filtered through. Mrs. Dorothy is asking for both of you. Bernard stepped back, the moment broken. We should go. My grandmother doesn't have many good mornings left. They found Dorothy in her room, propped up on pillows, her body frail, but her eyes sharp as ever. A private nurse stood nearby, quietly monitoring equipment. Leave us. Dorothy's voice was weak but firm. The nurse nodded and slipped out. Come here, both of you. Dorothy gestured them closer. Let me look at my grandson and his bride. They approached the bed together, and Angela felt Bernard's hand find hers, a simple gesture for his grandmother's benefit. But his grip was warm, solid, real. Dorothy studied them for a long moment. You think I'm a foolish old woman? Grandmother, Bernard started, but she waved him off. Let me finish. I'm dying, Bernard. I know it, you know it, everyone knows it. And yes, I wanted to see you settled before I go. But I'm not blind. Her gaze shifted between them. This marriage started as a convenience. I can see that clear as day. Angela's heart sank. They'd failed already, but Dorothy wasn't finished. However, she continued, I've watched people fall in love for 70 years. I know what it looks like in the beginning. Awkward, uncertain. 2 people trying to figure out if they fit together. That's what I see here. Not a love story complete, but one just beginning. She reached out a trembling hand to Angela. Your mother was a good woman, child. She would be proud of the sacrifice you're making for your family, even if she'd probably scold you for it too. You knew my mother. Angela's voice caught. Everyone in our old neighborhood knew Rebecca Morris. She fed half the hungry children on our street, including my grandson here when he needed it most. Dorothy squeezed Angela's hand weakly. That's why I'm not worried about this arrangement. Rebecca's daughter would never marry a man she couldn't eventually love, convenience or no. And my Bernard, for all his walls and coldness, has his grandfather's heart buried under all that ice. It just needs the right woman to thaw it. Bernard's hand tightened on Angela's. Rest now, grandmother. He leaned down to kiss her forehead. We'll visit again later. You'd better. Dorothy's eyes were already closing. I want to hear wedding night stories. Sweet ones, mind you. I'm old, not dead. Despite everything, Angela found herself smiling as they left the room. The rest of the day passed in a strange dance of domesticity. Bernard showed Angela through the house. Endless rooms, each more beautiful than the last. She met the staff, Martha, the housekeeper who'd worked for the family since Bernard was young, Henry, the cook who immediately wanted to know her favorite foods, James, the groundskeeper who tipped his hat and welcomed her warmly. Everyone was kind, professional, but Angela couldn't shake the feeling that they all knew this marriage was a transaction. By evening, she was exhausted, overwhelmed by the sheer size of her new life. She retreated to the bedroom, intending to call her brother, check on her father, ground herself in the reality of why she'd done this. But when she picked up her phone, she found a text from the hospital. Her father's surgery was scheduled. Everything was in motion. Her sacrifice had bought his life. She sat on the edge of the enormous bed and let herself cry, for relief, for fear, for the strangeness of everything that had happened. That's how Bernard found her when he knocked and entered with a tray of food. Martha insisted you haven't eaten all day. He stopped when he saw her tears. Angela, I'm fine. She wiped her eyes quickly. Just processing everything. Bernard set the tray down and, to her surprise, sat beside her on the bed. Not close, but not distant either. This is harder than you expected. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. I thought I was prepared. I thought I understood what I was agreeing to. But being here in this house, wearing your ring, being your wife, it's all so much more real than papers and signatures. I know. His voice was quiet. If it helps, this is strange for me, too. Angela looked at him sideways. You've done this before. Married a stranger for convenience. No, but I've kept people at a distance for so long that letting someone into my home, into my life, even under these circumstances, it's unsettling. Why do you do that? The question escaped before Angela could stop it. Keep everyone at a distance? Bernard was quiet for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. When he finally spoke, his voice held old pain. I was engaged once. Her name was Juliet. I thought she loved me, the man, not the money. I was wrong. He stood, moving to the window, putting distance between them. She was convincing. For 2 years, she played the part perfectly. Then I overheard her on the phone with her friend, laughing about how she'd hooked the awkward tech millionaire and would never have to work again. Bernard. I called off the wedding. She cried, begged, swore she loved me, but I'd heard the truth. Since then, I've been careful, very careful. Angela stood, crossing to him. Is that why you wanted this arrangement? Because at least with me, you know the truth from the start? Yes. He turned to face her. With you, there's no pretense. You're here for your father. I'm here for my grandmother. No lies, no games, just honest necessity. And when the necessity is over, Angela's heart was pounding. When your grandmother is gone and my family is secure? What happens to this honest arrangement then? Bernard looked at her, really looked at her, and for a moment Angela saw something in his eyes that made her breath catch. Want maybe, or possibility, or fear of both. I don't know, he admitted. For now, let's just try to survive each day. Can we do that? We can try, Angela managed a small smile. But Bernard? Thank you for telling me about Juliet. For being honest, it's all I know how to be with you." He gestured to the tray of food. "Eat something, please. I may not be a real husband, but I can at least make sure you're fed." As Angela picked at the meal Martha had prepared, Bernard sat with her, and they talked about small things: her father's improving numbers, his grandmother's better days, the garden outside that bloomed in spring. When she finally yawned, exhausted beyond measure, Bernard stood to leave. "Wait," Angela said, echoing the night before. Could we talk again, like last night?" Bernard looked torn, uncertain. "Angela, we shouldn't make this a habit. It complicates things, I know. But I'm alone in a strange house, married to a man I barely know, and talking to you is the only thing that's made me feel less like I'm drowning." Her voice cracked. "Please." Whatever wall Bernard tried to maintain crumbled at the vulnerability in her voice. He sat back down, this time on the small sofa rather than the uncomfortable chair. "All right, but just talking, she agreed. They talked until midnight about everything and nothing. Bernard told her about building his company from nothing. The long nights, the risks, the failures that taught him more than successes. Angela told him about nursing school, the first life she'd helped save, the first patient she'd lost. When her eyes grew heavy, Bernard covered her with a blanket and stayed, reading reports on his phone, while she drifted in and out of sleep, comforted by his presence. The next morning, she woke to find him gone. But a note on the table beside her made her smile. "You snore." "Just slightly. I'll never tell anyone. B." The days that followed fell into a rhythm. Bernard went to his office, while Angela visited her father, who was growing stronger every day, preparing for his procedure. In the evenings, Bernard would find her and they'd talk, sometimes for an hour, sometimes until dawn. They were learning each other, these two strangers, bound by necessity, and something was growing between them that neither wanted to name. Then came the night before her father's surgery. Angela was a mess of nerves, pacing the bedroom, unable to sit still. Bernard found her like that, immediately sensing her distress. "What do you need?" "I need to believe this will work, that I didn't sacrifice everything for nothing." He crossed to her, taking her shoulders gently. "Listen to me. Your father is strong. The doctors are excellent. And tomorrow, you'll be there when he wakes up and he'll have a chance at a long life because of what you did. And if something goes wrong, then you'll still know you did everything possible. You gave him a fighting chance. That's all any of us can do for the people we love." Angela looked up at him, tears streaming down her face, and before she could think about it, she wrapped her arms around him. Bernard stiffened for just a moment. Then his arms came around her, holding her close as she cried against his chest. He didn't tell her not to cry, didn't promise everything would be fine. He just held her solid and warm and real while she fell apart. When she finally pulled back, embarrassed, he kept one hand on her shoulder. "I'll go with you tomorrow. To the hospital. You don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I want to." The next day, Bernard sat beside her in the surgical waiting room, his hand covering hers, while her father underwent the procedure that would save his life. Her brother was there too, looking between them with growing understanding and approval. When the surgeon finally emerged with good news, Angela collapsed against Bernard in relief, and he held her like it was the most natural thing in the world. "See," he murmured against her hair. "I told you he was strong." Later that night, back at the estate, Angela stood in the bedroom doorway as Bernard started toward his adjoining room. "Bernard!" He turned, patient as always now. "Thank you. For today. For being there when you didn't have to be." He smiled, a real smile, the first she'd seen from him. It transformed his face, making him look almost boyish. "Get some rest, Angela. Your father will want to see you bright and early." But as he moved to leave, Angela spoke words that had been building for days. "This arrangement of ours, it's starting to feel less like a contract and more like something real." Bernard stopped, his hand on the doorknob, his back to her. When he spoke, his voice was rough with emotion. "I know. That terrifies me. Me too. He turned then, looking at her across the space between them. What do we do about it? Angela took a breath, making a choice that would change everything. We stop pretending we're just strangers following a contract. We see where this goes, honestly, like you said. No lies, no games, just us. Bernard crossed to her in 3 strides, stopping just inches away. Angela, I'm not good at this. I'm cold, I'm closed off, You're the man who sat in an uncomfortable chair all night because I asked you to, who held me while I cried, who sat in a hospital waiting room for hours because I needed you there. She reached up, touching his face gently. Maybe that's who you really are underneath all the walls. And if I disappoint you, if I can't be what you need, then we figure it out together. Isn't that what marriage is supposed to be? Even marriages that start as ours did. Bernard leaned into her touch, his eyes closing briefly. When they opened again, they held something that looked like hope and fear in equal measure. I don't want to hurt you. Then don't, and I won't hurt you. We'll just try, Bernard. Can we do that? Instead of answering with words, Bernard leaned down and kissed her, soft, questioning, nothing like their wedding kiss. This one was real, tentative, a first kiss despite the rings they wore. When he pulled back, his voice was barely a whisper. I'm going to try. God help me, I'm going to try. Angela smiled, her heart racing. That's all I'm asking. That night, Bernard didn't retreat to his room. He stayed with Angela and they talked until the sun rose. 2 people discovering that sometimes the most unexpected arrangements could lead to the most profound beginnings. And when Angela finally fell asleep, Bernard watched her with an expression that would have surprised anyone who thought they knew him. Wonder, tenderness, and the first dangerous stirrings of something that felt remarkably like love. Chapter 3. Living in his world. The Ellison estate in daylight was even more intimidating than it had been on Angela's wedding night. She stood at the massive window of what Bernard called the morning room, whom were watching groundskeepers tend to gardens that seemed to stretch forever, and felt like an imposter in someone else's life. The house was so quiet, so vast, so different from the cramped apartment she'd shared with her brother before all this. Every room seemed designed to impress rather than comfort, filled with expensive furniture that looked like it belonged in a museum. Angela missed the worn couch in her old living room, the tiny kitchen where she'd cooked simple meals, the sounds of neighbors and street traffic that meant life was happening all around her. Here, everything felt suspended, perfect, untouchable. Like her, you're up early. Bernard's voice came from behind her, and she turned to find him already dressed for the day, looking every inch the successful man he was. But his eyes, when they met hers, held the warmth from the night before. I couldn't sleep, Angela gestured to the grounds. This is all so much. I keep thinking I'll wake up in my tiny apartment and realize this was all a dream. Bernard crossed to her, holding out a cup of coffee prepared exactly as she'd mentioned. She liked it during one of their late-night conversations. The fact that he'd remembered made her chest tight. It's real. You're here. He paused, studying her face. Are you regretting it? The marriage, moving in here, all of it? No, not regretting. Angela took the coffee, grateful for something to hold. Just adjusting. Everything happened so fast, Bernard. One week I was a nurse struggling to pay bills, and now I'm living in a mansion, married to a man I barely know. It's a lot to process. I know. Bernard's voice was gentle, and I'm glad you're being honest about it. We don't have to pretend this is easy, Angela. We can take it one day at a time. And I'm glad you are, too. They stood together in comfortable silence, sipping coffee and watching the sun rise higher over the estate. Before Angela could respond, Martha bustled in with a knowing smile. Good morning, Mr. Bernard. Mrs. Ellison, breakfast is ready in the dining room. Mrs. Ellison. Angela wasn't sure she'd ever get used to that. The dining room could have seated 20 people comfortably, but the table was set for 2, intimate despite the grand surroundings. As they ate, Bernard's phone buzzed constantly, messages, calls, demands on his time and attention. I'm sorry. He silenced it for the 3rd time. Usually I handle these before breakfast. You don't have to change your routine for me. Angela set down her fork. I know you have a company to run. I do. But I also have a wife I've been neglecting to sit in endless meetings. Bernard's expression grew thoughtful. What are your plans today? I'm working the afternoon shift at the hospital. I thought I'd visit my father first. You're still working? Bernard seemed surprised. Angela, you don't have to. I meant what I said. I'll provide for everything you need. I know. But nursing isn't just what I do, it's who I am. Angela met her eyes steadily. I'm not going to stop being myself because I married you, Bernard. That wasn't part of our agreement. Instead of being offended, Bernard smiled, that genuine smile that transformed his whole face. Good, I wouldn't want you to. Really? Really? My grandmother was right about your mother. She never let anyone change who she was, not even when it would have been easier. I see that same strength in you. Angela felt her cheeks warm at the compliment. I should get ready for the hospital. I'll drive you. You don't have to. I know. Bernard stood, offering his hand to help her up. But I want to. Besides, I need to see how your father is recovering. Make sure the medical team is providing everything we promised. The drive to the hospital was quiet but comfortable, filled with the easy silence of two people learning to exist in each other's space. When Bernard pulled up to the entrance, Angela reached for the door handle, but his hand on her wrist stopped her. Angela, wait. She turned, finding him studying her with an intensity that made her breath catch. What is it? Last night, the things we said, the way I kissed you, I want you to know I meant it. All of it. But I also want to go slowly. This thing between us, He struggled for words. It's important. I don't want to rush it and ruin everything. Angela's heart swelled at his honesty. Slowly is good. We have time, Bernard. 2 years, remember? Something flickered in his eyes. Disappointment, maybe, that she'd mentioned the contract's timeline. But he nodded. 2 years, right. She leaned over and kissed his cheek, feeling him inhale sharply at the contact. Pick me up at 8. I'll be here. Angela's father was sitting up in bed when she arrived, color returning to his face for the first time in months. Her brother had fallen asleep in the chair beside him, medical textbooks scattered around him. Angela, sweetheart. Her father's voice was stronger than she'd heard in ages. Come sit with me. She took his hand, blinking back tears of relief. You look good, Dad. Really good. I feel like I might actually live to see my grandchildren. He squeezed her hand. Thanks to your husband. Angela's stomach tightened. They'd told her father that Bernard was an old family friend, that their relationship had developed quietly. But her father's knowing eyes suggested he suspected there was more to the story. Dad? Hush, let me say this. He shifted in the bed, wincing slightly. I don't know what arrangement you've made with Bernard Ellison, and maybe I don't want to know all the details. But I see the way he looks at you, Angela, like you're something precious he's afraid to break. That's not the look of a man doing someone a favor. It's complicated. Love usually is. Her father smiled gently. Your mother and we started as a setup by friends who thought we'd be good together. I thought she was too good for me. She thought I was too serious. But we gave it a chance, and look what happened. A lifetime of love and 2 beautiful children. This is different. Is it? You're married to a man who saved my life, who's taking care of this family. You're living in his home, wearing his ring. The only question is whether you're going to let yourself actually live in this marriage, or just exist in it. Angela didn't have an answer for that. Her shift at the hospital was brutal. A multi-car accident brought in 6 critical patients, and Angela worked until her feet ached and her hands shook from exhaustion. When her shift finally ended, she stumbled out of the hospital, expecting to call for a ride and find Bernard long gone. Instead, he was there, leaning against his car in the parking lot, his tie loosened and jacket draped over his arm, despite the cool evening air. Bernard? Angela's voice cracked with fatigue. What are you doing here? Waiting for you. He straightened, concern crossing his face when he saw how exhausted she was. I called to check if you were running late. They said there was an accident, multiple casualties. I couldn't leave them. Angela swayed slightly, the adrenaline that had kept her going finally wearing off. Bernard was there in an instant, his arm around her waist, supporting her weight. Of course you couldn't. Come on, let's get you home. In the car, Angela tried to stay awake, but her eyes kept drifting closed. Bernard's voice pulled her back. Tell me about it. The accident. Why? Because you're carrying it alone, and you shouldn't have to. So Angela told him about the teenage driver who might not walk again, the mother who'd protected her baby with her own body, the elderly man who kept asking for his wife who hadn't survived. She told him about the fear, the urgency, the terrible weight of holding lives in her hands. Bernard listened without interrupting, his hand finding hers and squeezing gently. When they arrived at the estate, Angela could barely keep her eyes open. Bernard came around to her door, and before she could protest, he lifted her into his arms. Bernard, I can walk. I know. Let me do this anyway. He carried her through the house, up the stairs into the bedroom. While she stood swaying with exhaustion, he ran a bath, adding oils that smelled like lavender and vanilla. Get in, he said gently. Soak. I'll have Martha bring up some food. You don't have to take care of me. Bernard cupped her face in his hands, his grey eyes soft. Maybe I want to. Maybe taking care of you is starting to feel like the most important thing I do all day. After he left, Angela sank into the bath and let tears mix with the warm water, tears of exhaustion, relief, and something else she was afraid to name. When she emerged in her robe, she found Bernard had set up a small table with soup, bread, and tea. He sat in the armchair reading, giving her space but staying close. You're still here, she said softly. Where else would I be? Angela ate slowly, and Bernard read aloud from his book, a novel she'd mentioned liking. His voice was soothing, washing over her like music. When she finally crawled into bed, he stood to leave, but Angela's hand shot out, catching his. Stay, please, Angela. Not for anything but this. Just stay with me. I don't want to be alone after today. Bernard looked torn, but he sat on the edge of the bed, his hand still holding hers. Tell me what you need, just this, just you being here. So he stayed, and when Angela's grip loosened in sleep, he didn't pull away. He sat there through the night, watching over her, and when dawn came, he realized something terrifying. This woman had become essential to him in a way that went far beyond their contract. The following weeks fell into a rhythm that felt dangerously close to real marriage. Bernard would drive Angela to the hospital, pick her up after her shifts, and they'd talk for hours about everything and nothing. He started coming home earlier, eager to see her. She started looking forward to his arrival, her heart racing when she heard his car in the driveway. One evening, Bernard came home to find Angela in the kitchen with Henry, laughing as she attempted to make her mother's famous stew. She had flour on her nose and sauce on her scrubs, and Bernard thought she'd never looked more beautiful. What's all this? He asked, unable to keep the smile from his face. I wanted to cook for you. Angela gestured to the chaos around her. Henry is heroically trying to save dinner from my complete lack of skills. You work a 12-hour shift and come home to cook? Bernard crossed to her, wiping the flour from her nose with his thumb. You're exhausted, Angela. You should be resting. I wanted to do something for you. You do so much for me, for my family. Bernard's heart clenched. You don't owe me anything. I know. That's not why I'm doing this. Angela met his eyes, and the air between them crackled with unspoken feelings. I'm doing this because I want to. Because coming home to you has become the best part of my day. Thomas quietly excused himself, leaving them alone in the kitchen. Bernard stepped closer, his hands coming to rest on Angela's waist. It's the best part of my day, too. Coming home to you, talking with you, just being near you. It's all I think about in meetings, on calls, every moment we're apart. Bernard, I'm falling for you. Angela, the words rushed out raw and honest. I know we said we'd go slowly. I know this was supposed to be just an arrangement. But somewhere between our late-night talks and watching you care for my grandmother and seeing the way you give everything to everyone around you, I fell hard. Angela's eyes filled with tears. I'm falling too. I've been terrified to admit it, even to myself, but I am. When you're not here, I miss you. When you are here, I want to be closer. This was supposed to be simple, but you've complicated everything, Bernard Ellison. He laughed, the sound full of relief and joy. Good, because simple was lonely. This, us, might be complicated, but it's the most right thing I've felt in years. Bernard leaned down, giving Angela time to pull away. She didn't. This kiss was nothing like their first tentative one. This was passion and promise, weeks of restraint breaking like a dam. Angela's arms wrapped around his neck, pulling him closer, and Bernard lifted her onto the counter, stepping between her legs, deepening the kiss until they were both breathless. When they finally pulled apart, Angela was flushed, her eyes bright. Dinner's probably ruined. I don't care. Bernard rested his forehead against hers, his hands still on her waist, thumbs tracing small circles that made her shiver. Angela, I want this to be real. Not just for my grandmother. Not just until the contract ends. I want a real marriage with you. What about going slowly? We'll go as slowly as you need. But I want you to know this isn't temporary for me anymore. You're not temporary for me anymore. Bernard pulled back to look into her eyes, his expression vulnerable in a way she'd never seen. I spent so long protecting myself, building walls, keeping everyone at a safe distance. But you walked right through those walls like they were made of paper. You made me want to feel again, to risk again, to love again. I'm scared, Bernard. What if this doesn't work? What if we're caught up in the intensity of the situation and when things settle down, then we work through it. Together. He kissed her forehead, her cheeks, her lips again. I'm scared too. Terrified, actually. But I'm more scared of losing you than I am of trying. I'm more scared of spending the rest of my life wondering what we could have been if I'd been brave enough to reach for it. That night, they ate burnt stew and laughed about it. They talked until midnight, curled up together on the couch like a real couple. And when Bernard walked Angela to the bedroom, she pulled him inside instead of letting him leave. Stay with me. Really stay with me this time. Bernard's eyes darkened with want and concern. Angela, are you sure? I don't want to rush you. I'm sure. She stepped closer, her hands on his chest. I want this. I want you. I want us to be real in every way. What happened next was tender and passionate, two people who'd been drawn to each other from the start, finally letting down all their walls. Bernard was gentle, reverent, treating Angela like she was precious, and Angela gave herself completely, trusting him with her body and her heart. Afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Bernard whispered against her hair, I love you, Angela Morris Ellison. I wasn't supposed to, but I do. Angela's heart soared. I love you too. This wasn't how I imagined falling in love, but I can't imagine it any other way now. They fell asleep tangled together, and for the first time since their wedding, both of them slept in the same bed, in the same room. As a true husband and wife, the next morning, Angela woke to Bernard watching her with an expression of such tenderness it made her breath catch. Good morning, wife. Good morning, husband. The words felt different now, weighted with meaning and love, but their happiness was interrupted by a knock on the door. Martha's voice came through, apologetic but urgent. Mr. Bernard, I'm so sorry, but it's Mrs. Dorothy. She's asking for both of you. The nurse says it's important. They dressed quickly and hurried to Dorothy's room, finding her weaker than she'd been, her breathing labored. But her eyes lit up when she saw them enter hand in hand. There you are, she whispered, my beautiful couple. Come closer. They sat on either side of her bed, and Dorothy took one of each of their hands. I can see it now. Real love? Not the pretend kind you started with, but the kind that lasts, she smiled weakly. You gave an old woman the gift of seeing her grandson happy before she leaves this world. Thank you. Grandmother, don't talk like that, Bernard's voice cracked. Hush, child. We both know it's time. Dorothy squeezed Angela's hand. Take care of him. He acts tough, but underneath he feels everything so deeply. Don't let him hide from that. I won't, Angela promised through tears. And Bernard, let yourself be loved. Let yourself be happy. You deserve it. Dorothy's eyes were closing. Promise me. I promise, Grandmother. I love you. I love you too, my boy. Both of you. Now let me rest. I'm very tired. They stayed with her, holding her hands as she drifted off to sleep. The nurse assured them she was stable, just exhausted. But Angela could read the truth in the woman's eyes. Dorothy didn't have much time left. Over the next week, they took turns sitting with Dorothy, reading to her, holding her hand, making sure she was never alone. Bernard opened up to Angela about his childhood, about how Dorothy had sacrificed her own dreams to raise him and his sister after their parents died. Angela shared stories of her own mother, and they grieved together for the strong women who'd shaped them. One evening, curled up together on the couch after a long day at Dorothy's bedside, Bernard said something that surprised Angela. When my grandmother is gone, when the 2 years are up, I don't want this to end. I want to marry you again, properly, with you in a dress you choose, and vows we write ourselves, and a future we build together. Angela's eyes filled with happy tears. I'd like that. But Bernard, we're already married. We already have those vows, but we made them under false pretenses. I want to make them again, meaning every word, with no contract between us. Just love, then we will. Angela kissed him softly. We'll renew our vows, and it will be perfect because it will be real. As they held each other in the quiet of their home, both of them understood that their arrangement had transformed into something neither of them had expected. A love story that started in necessity but bloomed into something extraordinary. And outside their window, in the garden Dorothy loved, flowers bloomed in the moonlight, bearing witness to a love that defied all expectations. Chapter 4. The Walls Come Down. 3 months into their marriage, Angela woke to an empty bed and the sound of running water from the bathroom. She smiled, stretching languorously, her body still humming from the night before. Loving Bernard Ellison had become as natural as breathing, and every day she fell a little deeper. But when Bernard emerged from the shower, his expression was troubled. What's wrong? Angela sat up, concern replacing contentment. I got a call early this morning. There's a charity gala tomorrow night, one of the biggest events of the season. The foundation I support is being honored. He sat on the edge of the bed, his jaw tight. Juliet will be there. Angela's stomach clenched at the name of Bernard's ex-fiancée, the woman who'd broken his trust so completely. Do you want to skip it? Liz, I can't. I'm giving a speech, presenting the award. But Angela, he turned to her, taking her hands. She'll say things. Try to hurt you, hurt us. She always does. Then we face her together. Angela squeezed his hands. Bernard, I'm not afraid of your past. I'm here, I'm real, and I love you. Some bitter woman can't change that. Bernard pulled her into his arms, holding her tight. What did I do to deserve you? You let me in. You let yourself love me back. That's all I ever wanted. The next evening, Angela stood in front of the mirror, barely recognizing herself. The dress Bernard had insisted on buying her was stunning, deep emerald that brought out the richness of her skin, elegant and sophisticated. Martha had helped with her hair and makeup, and the woman staring back at her looked like she belonged in Bernard's world. But inside, Angela was nervous. Bernard appeared behind her, devastating in his formal suit, and his eyes widened when he saw her. Angela! Her name came out reverently. You're breathtaking. You clean up pretty well yourself. She turned to face him, adjusting his bow tie. Are you ready for this? With you by my side, I can face anything. The gala was everything Angela had imagined and feared. Crystal chandeliers, designer gowns, champagne flowing freely, and wealth displayed casually. She felt eyes on her as they entered, heard the whispers. That's his wife, the nurse he married out of nowhere? I heard it was his dying grandmother's wish. Bernard's hand tightened on hers, and he leaned down to whisper, "Ignore them. You're worth 10 of everyone in this room." They made their way through the crowd, Bernard introducing Angela to colleagues and donors. She smiled, made polite conversation, and tried not to feel like an imposter. Then she saw her. Juliet Pemberton was everything Angela wasn't. Blonde, willowy, dressed in a white gown that probably cost more than Angela made in 6 months. And she was heading straight toward them with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Bernard, darling," Juliet air-kissed both his cheeks, completely ignoring Angela. "You look wonderful. Success suits you." "Juliet," Bernard's voice was cool, professional. "This is my wife, Angela." Juliet finally turned to Angela, her gaze sweeping from head to toe in obvious assessment. "Oh yes, the nurse. How quaint. You must feel like Cinderella at the ball." Angela felt Bernard tense beside her, but she kept her voice calm. "Actually, I feel like a woman attending an event with her husband. Nothing more complicated than that." "Of course." Juliet's laugh was tinkling, practiced. "Bernard always did have a soft spot for charity cases. I suppose you're the ultimate one, aren't you? Marrying you probably got him a nice tax deduction." "That's enough," Bernard's voice cut like ice. "You will not speak to my wife that way." "Oh, come now, we all know this isn't a real marriage." Juliet sipped her champagne, her eyes cruel. "His dying grandmother's last wish? A convenient arrangement, please. How long do you think it will last once the old woman is gone?" Angela felt the barb hit home, even though she knew the truth of her and Bernard's love. But before she could respond, Bernard stepped between them, his body shielding Angela. "Listen very carefully, Juliet, because I'm only going to say this once." His voice was low, dangerous. "Angela is my wife in every way that matters. She's worth 10 of you, hell, 100 of you. She saves lives every day, while you spend your father's money on dresses and spite. She has more compassion in her little finger than you have in your entire body. And she's loved me, truly loved me, in a way you never could because you're incapable of loving anything except your own reflection." The people nearby had fallen silent, watching the confrontation. Juliet's face flushed with humiliation. "You'll regret this, Bernard, when she shows her true colors." "The only person whose true colors I regret not seeing sooner is you." Bernard took Angela's hand. "Now, if you'll excuse us, I have an award to present, to people who actually contribute something meaningful to the world." He led Angela away, his hand trembling slightly with anger. Once they were in a quieter corner, Angela pulled him close. "Hey, look at me." She cupped his face. "I'm okay. She can't hurt me with words." "She tried." Bernard's eyes were stormy. "She tried to make you feel small, and I won't tolerate that." "I know, and I love that you defended me. But Bernard, I also need you to know I don't need defending from her. I know who I am. I know what we have. Some bitter woman's opinion doesn't change that." Bernard kissed her, right there in front of everyone, a kiss that left no doubt about the nature of their relationship. When he pulled back, Angela was breathless. "I love you so much it terrifies me sometimes," he admitted. "The thought of anyone hurting you, then don't let them. The best revenge on Juliet is our happiness. Let her watch us be genuinely in love while she drowns in her own bitterness." Bernard laughed, some of the tension leaving his shoulders. "When did you become so wise?" "I learned from nursing. Bitterness is like an infection. It only spreads if you let it into your system. I'm not letting her poison what we have." The rest of the evening went beautifully. Bernard's speech was moving, talking about the importance of medical research and access to health care for everyone, and Angela felt her heart swell with pride. This man, who could have spent his wealth on himself instead, dedicated it to helping others. During dinner, she met some of Bernard's closest colleagues and friends, and slowly realized that most of them were genuinely happy for him. They saw the change in him, how he smiled more, laughed easier, seemed lighter. "He's different with you," one older gentleman told Angela. "I've known Bernard for 15 years, and I've never seen him this happy. Whatever you're doing, keep doing it." As they danced later, Angela in Bernard's arms, she felt the last of her nervousness melt away. This was where she belonged, not because of the money or the mansion or the gala, but because she was with the man she loved. "Thank you for defending me tonight," she said softly. "Even though I didn't need it, it felt good knowing you'd go to battle for me." "Always," Bernard pulled her closer. "You're my wife, Angela. My partner, my love, my everything. I'll always stand between you and anything that tries to hurt you, and I'll do the same for you." They swayed together, and Angela noticed Juliet watching from across the room, her expression a mixture of envy and regret. Angela felt a moment of pity for the woman who'd let Bernard go. But then Bernard whispered, "I want to get out of here. Take you home. Make love to my beautiful wife until we forget this gala ever happened." Angela shivered at the promise in his voice. "I think that can be arranged." They left shortly after, and the drive home was filled with heated glances and barely restrained desire. The moment they entered the bedroom, Bernard pulled Angela into his arms, kissing her with a passion that stole her breath. "Mine," he murmured against her lips. "You're mine, Angela. Not an arrangement, not a contract. Mine." "Yours," she agreed, her hands working at his bow tie. "And you're mine, Bernard Ellison. All of you." What followed was passionate and tender, desperate and loving, a reaffirmation of everything they'd become to each other. And afterward, wrapped in each other's arms, Bernard said something that made Angela's heart stop. "I want to marry you again." She pulled back to look at him. "What? Not legally, we're already married. But I want to renew our vows. Do it properly, with our family and friends, with words we choose ourselves. I want everyone to know that this isn't an arrangement anymore. It's real love." Tears filled Angela's eyes. "When?" "Whenever you want. Next month, next year, tomorrow, I don't care. I just want to stand in front of the people we love and tell the world that you're my choice, my forever." "Yes." Angela kissed him, tasting salt from both their tears. "Yes, let's do it. Let's renew our vows and make this marriage everything we want it to be." They made love again, slower this time, savoring each touch, each kiss, each whispered promise of forever. The next morning, Angela woke to find Bernard already awake, watching her with an expression of such love it made her chest ache. "Good morning." "Beautiful. Good morning." She stretched, smiling. "Did you mean it? About renewing our vows?" "Every word. Angela, you've given me something I never thought I'd have. A real partnership, true love, a home that feels like more than just a house. I want to celebrate that publicly and proudly." "Then let's do it." Angela sat up, excitement building. "But Bernard, I have one condition. Anything. I want it to be simple, not some huge gala like last night. Just us, our families, the people who really matter." Bernard smiled. "Perfect. I don't need a crowd to prove my love for you. I just need you, me, and the people we care about." They spent the morning planning, talking about what they wanted their vow renewal to look like. Angela wanted it in the garden where Dorothy used to sit. Bernard wanted to write his own vows. They both wanted her father to walk her down the aisle, her brother to stand with Bernard, and for it to happen before Dorothy's health declined further. "She'll love this," Angela said softly, "seeing us renew our vows with real love." "She already knows." Bernard kissed her forehead. "She told me last week that she could see it, how we'd fallen for each other. She was proud of both of us for being brave enough to let it happen. She's an incredible woman, she is. And she loves you like a granddaughter already." The phone rang then, interrupting their planning. Bernard answered, his expression growing concerned as he listened. "We'll be right there." He hung up, already moving to get dressed. "That was the night nurse. My grandmother had a difficult night. She's asking for both of us." They dressed quickly and hurried to Dorothy's room, finding her looking frail and tired but alert. Her face lit up when she saw them. "There are my lovebirds." Her voice was weak but warm. "Come, sit with me." They sat on either side of her bed, and Dorothy took one of each of their hands. "I heard about last night. About Juliet. She squeezed Bernard's hand. You defended your wife well, my boy. How did you— I have my sources, Dorothy smiled. And I'm proud of you both. Bernard, for standing up for your love. Angela, for being gracious and strong. You're a formidable team. We learned from the best, Angela said, squeezing Dorothy's hand gently. Flatterer. But Dorothy's eyes were pleased. Now I want to talk to you both about something important. My time is growing short. No, don't argue. We all know it's true. And I want you to know how happy you've made me. Grandmother, Bernard's voice cracked. Hush, let me finish. This marriage started as a favor to me, I know that. But watching it become real, watching you two fall in love, it's been the greatest gift of my final days. You've given me hope, joy, and the knowledge that my grandson will be loved and cared for after I'm gone. Angela's tears fell freely. You'll be with us for much longer, Dorothy. You're strong. I'm dying, sweet girl. And that's all right. I've lived a full life, loved deeply, and now I get to leave knowing my family is secure. She looked between them. Promise me something. Promise you'll keep choosing each other, even when it's hard. Love isn't just the easy moments, it's the difficult ones too. Promise me you'll fight for this. We promise, they said together. Dorothy smiled, satisfied. Good, now I'm tired. But before I rest, Bernard, there's something in my desk drawer. A small box. Get it for me. Bernard did as asked, returning with a velvet jewelry box. Dorothy opened it with shaking hands, revealing a simple gold band with a single diamond. This was my wedding ring. Your grandfather gave it to me when we had nothing but love and hope. I want you to have it, Angela. Dorothy, I can't. It's too precious. Which is exactly why you should have it. Dorothy pressed the box into Angela's hands. Bernard's grandfather loved me the way Bernard loves you, completely, fiercely, with his whole heart. This ring represents that kind of love. Wear it, remember it, and pass it on to someone you love someday. Angela slipped the ring on, and it fit perfectly. She looked at it through tears, then at Bernard, who was crying too. Thank you, Angela whispered, kissing Dorothy's cheek. I'll treasure it always. I know you will. Dorothy settled back against her pillows. Now, tell me about these vow renewals you're planning. I want to hear everything. They spent the afternoon with her, sharing their plans, making her laugh with stories, and simply being together as a family. And when Dorothy finally drifted off to sleep, they knew these moments were precious, numbered, irreplaceable. In the hallway, Bernard pulled Angela into his arms. I don't know what I'd do without you. Going through this with my grandmother, it would destroy me if I were alone. You're not alone. You have me always. Angela held him tight. We'll get through this together, Bernard. All of it. And as they held each other in the quiet hospital corridor, both of them understood that their love had become the foundation they'd build the rest of their lives on. Tested by trials, strengthened by commitment, and made real by choice. Chapter 5. When the Past Resurfaces. Dorothy Ellison passed away on a Tuesday morning. With Bernard and Angela holding her hands, she went peacefully, with a smile on her face and love surrounding her. But the loss shattered Bernard in a way Angela had never seen. The funeral was beautiful and heartbreaking. Bernard delivered the eulogy with a strength Angela knew was costing him everything. He spoke of Dorothy's sacrifices, her unconditional love, the way she'd raised him and Diane with grace, despite losing her own children far too young. His voice only broke once at the end, when he thanked her for teaching him that love was always worth the risk. Angela stood beside him, offering silent support, and when he finally broke down after the service, she held him while he sobbed against her shoulder. She's gone, he choked out. The last person who knew me before all of this, before the money and the company, she's gone. I'm here. Angela stroked his hair, her own tears falling. I'm here, Bernard, and I'm not going anywhere. She knew me when I was just a scared kid who'd lost everything. She saw something in me worth saving, worth fighting for. Bernard's grief poured out in waves. What if I'm not the man she thought I could be? What if I fail her now that she's gone? You won't. Bernard, look at me. Angela cupped his face, making him meet her eyes. You're exactly the man she believed you'd be. Strong, compassionate, capable of deep love. She saw that in you when you were young, and she was right. You've honored her every day by becoming the person she knew you could be. I miss her so much already. I know, love. I know. Angela held him closer. And you'll miss her every day for the rest of your life. But she's not truly gone. She's in you, in Diane, in every scholarship you fund and every life you help save through your foundation. She's in the garden she loved, and she'll be in our children when we have them. Her love doesn't end just because she's gone. They stayed in each other's arms until Bernard's breathing steadied, until he could face the guests who'd come to pay their respects. They stayed in each other's arms until Bernard's breathing steadied, until he could face the guests who'd come to pay their respects. But at the gathering after the funeral, Bernard's Uncle Thomas appeared, a man Angela had never met, who Bernard had mentioned exactly once as someone who'd abandoned the family years ago. Thomas was in his 60s, distinguished-looking, with calculating eyes that reminded Angela of a predator sizing up prey. "Bernard, my boy," Thomas approached with false warmth. "I'm so sorry for your loss. Dorothy was a remarkable woman." Bernard's entire body tensed. "Uncle Thomas, I'm surprised you came, considering you haven't spoken to her in over a decade. Family feuds are so unfortunate." Thomas's smile didn't reach his eyes. "I've always regretted that, and now I'd like to make amends. The funeral is over. You can leave. Actually, I need to speak with you and your lawyers. There's the matter of Dorothy's will." Angela felt Bernard's hand tighten on hers, his entire demeanor shifting from grieving grandson to cold businessman. "My grandmother's will is none of your concern." "On the contrary." Thomas pulled an envelope from his jacket. "I've been in contact with my own attorneys, and there are some irregularities I believe need to be addressed. Specifically regarding your marriage." Angela's blood ran cold. "What are you talking about?" Bernard's voice was dangerous. "Come now, Bernard. We both know your marriage to this lovely young woman was rather sudden, conveniently timed with Dorothy's declining health. And given that her will leaves everything to you, contingent on you being married and settled, well, it all looks rather suspicious, doesn't it?" Get out." Bernard's voice was ice. "Now, I'm afraid I can't do that. You see, I'm contesting the will. I believe your marriage was a fraud, designed specifically to meet the conditions of Dorothy's inheritance. And if I can prove that, well, everything changes." Bernard looked like he might physically throw Thomas out, but Angela squeezed his hand, keeping him grounded. "Our marriage is real," she said firmly. "Whatever you think you know, you're wrong." Thomas's smile was pitying. "I'm sure you believe that, dear. But I have investigators looking into the timeline. The sudden wedding, the contract you both signed, the financial arrangements. It all paints a rather clear picture. A picture of a dying woman's wish being honored," Bernard said through clenched teeth. "Nothing more." "We'll let the courts decide that." Thomas handed the envelope to Bernard. "You've been served. See you in court, nephew." After he left, Bernard stood frozen, the envelope in his hands like a bomb, waiting to explode. "Bernard!" Angela touched his arm gently. He turned to her, and the anguish in his eyes broke her heart. "He's going to destroy everything. The company, my grandmother's legacy, us, everything." "He can't destroy us." Angela took his face in her hands. "Bernard, listen to me. We know the truth. Yes, we started as an arrangement, but we fell in love. We're real now. That's all that matters. Is it?" Bernard pulled away, pacing. "Angela, if Thomas proves the marriage was initially fraudulent, I could lose the company. Everything my grandmother built, everything she left to ensure the family was secure, it could all go to him. Then we fight." Angela's voice was steel. "We fight for your grandmother's wishes, for the company, for us. But Bernard, we do it together." Bernard looked at her, something desperate in his expression. "What if fighting means exposing everything? The contract? The arrangement, the fact that we married specifically to meet the will's conditions. Then we expose it. And we show how that arrangement became real love. Angela crossed to him, taking his hands. Bernard, I'm not afraid of the truth, are you? I'm afraid of losing you. The admission was raw, vulnerable. If this goes public, if everyone knows we started as a business deal, then they'll also know that we fell in love despite that. Or maybe because of it. Angela smiled through her tears. We have nothing to be ashamed of. Bernard pulled her into his arms, holding her like she might disappear. I love you so much. I love you too. And we're going to get through this. But over the next weeks, Angela learned that Thomas was thorough and ruthless. Investigators showed up at the hospital where Angela worked, asking questions about the timeline of her father's illness and treatment. They interviewed her brother, her neighbors from her old apartment, anyone who might have information about her relationship with Bernard before the wedding. The stress was enormous. Bernard became consumed with meetings with lawyers, reviewing documents, preparing for the legal battle ahead. Angela tried to support him, but she could see him pulling away, retreating into the cold, distant version of himself she'd first met. One night, after Bernard had spent 12 hours with his legal team, Angela found him in his office, staring at the contract they'd signed months ago. Bernard. He looked up, and she saw exhaustion and fear in his eyes. My lawyers think Thomas has a case. The timing, the contract, the financial arrangement for your father's treatment, it all looks calculated. It was calculated. At first, Angela sat beside him. But Bernard, we both know what happened after. How we fell in love, how real this became. Can we prove that in court? Bernard's laugh was hollow. How do we prove love, Angela? How do we show them that somewhere between convenience and contract we found something real? We tell the truth, all of it. The truth could cost me everything. Bernard stood, pacing again. My grandmother's company, the Medical Research Foundation, the scholarships, all of it goes to Thomas if I lose. He'll dismantle everything she built. Then we make sure you don't lose. Bernard turned to her, his expression tortured. What if I asked you to lie? To say we'd been secretly dating before the arrangement, that we were in love all along? Angela's heart sank. Bernard, I know. He ran his hands through his hair. I'm not asking you to. I couldn't ask you to, but the thought crossed my mind, and I hate myself for it. Angela crossed to him, making him look at her. Hey, the fact that you won't ask me to lie, that you hate yourself for even considering it, that's who you are. That's the man I fell in love with. I'm scared, Angela, terrified, not of losing the money or the company, scared of losing you. If this goes public, if everyone knows our marriage started as a transaction, then they'll see what I see. A man who honored his grandmother's dying wish. A woman who saved her father's life. And two people who were brave enough to fall in love when they weren't supposed to. Bernard kissed her desperately, and Angela tasted his fear, his love, his desperation. When they pulled apart, she kept her hands on his face. We're going to get through this, together. Do you trust me? With everything I am. Then trust that our love is strong enough to survive whatever Thomas throws at us. The deposition date arrived too quickly. Angela sat in a conference room across from Thomas's lawyers, Bernard beside her, their own legal team surrounding them. The questions were invasive, clinical, designed to strip away the love and leave only the transaction. When did you meet Mr. Ellison? What were the terms of your agreement? How much was your father's treatment? When did this supposed love develop? Angela answered honestly, refusing to be ashamed. Yes, they'd married as an arrangement. Yes, Bernard had paid for her father's treatment. Yes, there had been a contract. But when they asked about her feelings for Bernard, she looked directly at him and spoke from her heart. I didn't marry Bernard for love. I married him to save my father's life. But somewhere between signing papers and living in the same house, between late-night conversations and watching him care for his dying grandmother, I fell in love with him. Real love, the kind that makes you want to be better, that makes you brave, that makes you willing to fight for each other no matter what. Thomas's lawyer sneered. How convenient that this love developed exactly when you needed it to. Love isn't convenient. Angela's voice was strong. It's messy and complicated, and sometimes it comes at the wrong time or in the wrong way. But it's real. Bernard and I are real, and no amount of legal maneuvering can change that. Bernard squeezed her hand under the table, his eyes shining with unshed tears. When it was Bernard's turn, he was equally honest. He admitted to the arrangement, to the contract, to offering to pay for Angela's father's treatment in exchange for marriage. But when asked about his feelings for Angela, his voice cracked with emotion. I thought I was protecting myself by making this arrangement. I thought a marriage without love would be safer, simpler. I was wrong. Angela didn't just become my wife. She became my partner, my best friend, my reason for wanting to be better. She brought light into a life I'd let grow cold. And yes, this marriage started as a business deal, but it became the realest thing in my life. After the deposition, exhausted and emotionally drained, they returned to the estate. Angela found Bernard in the garden, standing at the bench where Dorothy used to sit. "She would be so disappointed in me," he said quietly. "Fighting over her will, having our marriage questioned, bringing shame to the family name. She would be proud of you for fighting for what matters." Angela sat beside him. "Bernard, you're protecting her legacy, defending the company she built. That's not shameful. I'm also the reason our marriage is being scrutinized. If you'd just what? Let your grandmother die without honoring her wish? Let my father die because you were afraid of looking opportunistic?" Angela took his hand. "You did the right thing, Bernard. We both did." "I wish I could be sure of that." They sat in silence, the weight of everything pressing down on them. Then Angela spoke words that had been forming since the deposition. "Bernard, regardless of what happens with the will, I want you to know something. I would choose this. Even knowing how hard it would be, even knowing we'd face this, I would still choose you, choose us. Every time." Bernard turned to her, tears on his face. "I don't deserve you.